Hello, everybody. Hi, welcome. Glad to see we already have a couple of people joining us. Awesome. Glad to have you here. Welcome, welcome. Give everybody a moment or two to jump on and join in. You may be coming from the previous live stream. There was a watercolor swatch party on right before the ArtSnacks Open Studio live. So if you were over there, welcome. I'm excited to talk about some more art supplies. I was watching the swatch party myself, and it was really fun. It was so cool getting to see all the different colors. I especially liked the color palettes that they were picking. Hey, Nicole or Nicole, welcome. Nice to have you here. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So my name is Amelia, and I'm here with ArtSnacks to host the ArtSnacks Open Studio Live. We're on every Thursday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, so feel free to join us. You can also catch the replays on the ArtSnacks YouTube channel. So I have a lot of really exciting, cool stuff to share with you tonight. You may notice I have a couple of extra supplies here to go with the ArtSnacks April box, but I'll talk about those in a little bit. I want to go ahead and dive right into opening up the box. So I'm going to set these off to the side, and then if it's something that you want to try out, you can always run and grab a couple extra supplies, or you can catch the replay and try it out then. So I'm going to carefully move my candle over here, and we're going to go ahead and open this up. So if you have already opened up your April box and you want to grab the supplies that came in it, go ahead and grab that. If you want to follow along, you're also welcome just to kind of hang out and watch. But I always love a good unboxing. So I'm going to go ahead and sit my box over to the side, and we can look at what comes inside of the April box. So I opened the ArtSnacks Plus box, and before I get too into all the supplies, I was just so excited, I totally forgot. If you are interested in subscribing to ArtSnacks, if you are not already a subscriber, right now there is a coupon code. Let me hold that up a little closer. There's a coupon code for anybody who is thinking about subscribing to ArtSnacks if you're not already a subscriber. If you use the code ENJOY20 at checkout, you can take 20% off your first box of an ArtSnacks or ArtSnacks Plus subscription plan. So if you're brand new to ArtSnacks and you're not sure what comes in the box, this is a good opportunity to kind of get a little preview of what it's like to get the Plus box. The regular ArtSnacks boxes have most of the same supplies. It just doesn't come with some of the bonus supplies or a substrate. So that's kind of the main difference, but you still get some really awesome full-size art supplies in the regular box too. So this you can go over to shop.artsnacks.co to use that code at checkout. And while we're talking about the ArtSnacks shop, this is my weekly reminder that there is still a sale going on with markers, and that is through the end of April. So that's going to be through Sunday. If you use the code MADNESS, you can take 50% off all markers in the ArtSnacks shop. So again, it's shop.artsnacks.co. And if you spend up to $45, you can get a free Marabou graphics pad, which is pretty cool. It's marker paper. It's very nice. And while I am sharing updates, this is just another reminder to check out Mix. If you're not already on Mix, it's ArtSnacks' very own social media site, which is very cool. It's mix.artsnacks.co. And that's a place where you can go hang out, chat with other artists, other art snackers. You can share works in progress, all that good stuff. You don't have to be a subscriber to join, and it's totally free to join. Okay, so back to the exciting part, which is the unboxing. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the envelope because inside there are cards that tell you all about the supplies that come in the box. So we'll start with that. And of course, there's always a snack. I'm going to save mine for later. So I'm going to set that aside. And we have the really awesome green burrito that has some really nice supplies inside. I'm going to go ahead and open that up as well. So these two are the bonus items that come in the plus box. So if you're getting the regular ArtSnacks box, these won't be included, but whatever is in this burrito is what you can expect in a regular ArtSnacks box. Okay. So let's set aside our tissue paper. I always save the tissue paper. You can use it for, an art project, but I always save it. I've used it in gift wrapping myself. So it's kind of nice to hang on to it, to have a stock of the paper as well. Okay. So you, of course, get a lovely ArtSnacks sticker. The design is usually different every month, which is pretty cool. So you can really create a really big collection of stickers, which is pretty awesome. So let's start with what comes in the regular ArtSnacks box. So the first item that I'm really excited about, and is going to be kind of the main focus of today's unboxing, once I get into doing some swatching, is Sennelier oil pastels. And I know a lot of people are very maybe intimidated by oil pastels, but I'm going to show you some techniques today for using them that I think will make them feel a little less intimidating and hopefully will inspire you. So the Sennelier oil pastels, I'll go ahead and open them. They're in bubble wrap to protect them because they're very soft. So I'm going to go ahead and take that off. And they're safe in their nice little bubble wrap pocket. So the three Sennelier oil pastels, in 1949, Sennelier developed their incomparable oil pastels for a famous artist you may have heard of, Picasso. Picasso was looking for a medium that could be used freely on a variety of surfaces without fading or cracking, and Sennelier oil pastels were born. They have an extremely high pigment content, which results in great content, excellent brightness, and light fastness. You'll fall in love with the creamy texture and unlimited possibilities. So it's really cool about oil pastels. If you're somebody who's interested maybe in oil painting, but you're not quite ready to make the jump to a really involved setup process, a really long time waiting for everything to dry, these can be a really great step in between if you're getting ready to start doing some oil painting, or if you want something that's a little easier to take on the go. These are really great for that. What also comes with that are these Art Alternatives blending stumps. There's a set of 2 in here. So blending stumps are really great for a variety of art supplies. So even if you don't end up using them with the oil pastels, you can use these with graphite pencils. You can use them with colored pencils. So they're really handy and really useful for a lot of things other than just the oil pastels as well. So even though you can easily use your fingers to blend your new oil pastels, these blending stumps from Art Alternatives are great for finer details and small areas. So to use, you just rub from darker to lighter colors or in circular motions in both ways to produce a blended hue. So I'll show you how to use this with the oil pastels, as well as a couple of other interesting techniques. So hopefully this will be something that gets you really inspired to try them out. Another cool feature in here is the Plumchester paint marker. This is an ArtSnacks exclusive. Plumchester is an ArtSnacks brand, which is really cool. And this marker is filled with acrylic paint that's fast drying, opaque, and permanent. It works on a variety of surfaces, and you can reverse the tip, and you'll find 2 different nibs. There's a 3mm bullet on one end and a 5mm chisel on the other. An important note that is on the little menu in here is that you want to use this marker underneath your oil pastels and not layered on top. And the reason for that is that the oil pastel can build up on the surface of your marker, and then the ink can't flow out of the nib anymore. So if you put that layer down first, you can go on top of it once it's dry with the oil pastel. All right, so those were the 3 items featured in the regular box, and now we'll move on to the bonus, and then I'll tell you a little bit about some of the extra art supplies that I brought with me. So the paper is Clairefontaine Paint On White Mixed Media paper. This is size 7 by 10 inches, and you can use wet and dry media on this paper pad. It can handle anything, and it's filled with 20 sheets of bright white, heavyweight 250 GSM paper that resists buckling and warping, which is really great if you're building up layers or if you're working with any kind of wet materials. And whether you're applying ink, watercolor, acrylic, or pastels, the colors will stay vibrant and not bleed through the paper, which is a really good thing. So you can definitely work on some layers, and it has a nice smooth finish to it. And it's a really nice bright white, so those colors will really shine on top of the white paper. And then last but not least, there's a set of Faber-Castell Pitt Artist Pens. This is the lettering art set. So I'm going to go ahead and open that up while I tell you about it. So in this set, you're going to find 4 different colors of Faber-Castell Pitt Artist Pens, and they all look great together. The pen's nib works like a paintbrush, and it can create a range of brush strokes from broad to narrow. It has India ink, which is light, fast, and waterproof, and it can be layered to create new or deeper colors. And when you're storing these, you don't want to set them upright in a container. You want to keep them horizontal, so that way the ink doesn't flow too far to one end or the other, especially towards the tip, because you may end up trying to put a layer down, and then you have too much ink. Whereas if you store it the other way, all your ink, it might be harder for it to flow from the bottom to the brush part. And I'll say also, just like the Plumchester pen, you probably want to put this layer down first before you start adding any of the oil pastel, because that, again, it can sort of build up on the brush, and it might be harder to get the ink to flow once there's oil pastel on the top. So while I get everything kind of set up, feel free to jump into the chat and share where you're watching from. Share if you have ever used oil pastels before. Are you intimidated by oil pastels? Do you like them? Do you dislike them? And what about them do you like or dislike? I'm curious because I feel like there can be a really strong reaction from people when it comes to something like oil pastels, or they're like, oh gosh, I won't use those. Or they're like, yeah, I like them. I think they're pretty nice. So I'm curious what everyone else's sort of initial reaction is when they hear that there's oil pastels. All right, I'm gonna pull a sheet off, and I have a couple of oil pastel tips for you. So the first one is if you have any kind of, if you have newspaper or newsprint paper, it can be really useful to put a piece underneath, so that as you're working and the oil pastel starts to kind of build up, you have paper underneath to catch it. So, as you're working on your surface, if your hand accidentally smudges it, you don't have to worry about having a mess to clean up. You can just either hang on to this for swatching or toss it after. And I have an extra piece that I'm going to use for swatching or kind of cleaning off my drawing tools. So I'll show you a couple of the extra things that I brought just in case you want to grab them, or if you're curious about what I'm using. So I have a little container here. This is baby oil. I have also a couple of washi tapes. I have ArtSnacks washi tape. And then I have a couple of different scratching tools. And these are all things that you might have just laying around. I have a blade, which I put some tape on the end just to make it a little safer to handle. I have a couple of X-Acto knives. I have just a thumbtack. And I also have a paper clip, which I'm going to unfold so that I have this end available to scratch with. I also have a couple of Q-tips, and I have a really coarse paintbrush, and this is kind of a brush that I use for crafting rather than fine art paintings. So that if it gets kind of messy, then it's okay. I'm not terribly worried about it. Yes, be careful. If you're using anything sharp, just use a lot of caution and pay attention as you're working with it so that there aren't any accidents, especially if you are one of our younger art snackers. Make sure you have somebody to help you. if you're using that. So I'm going to put down some washi tape on my paper just to kind of block out some areas on here so that I have some nice clean edges when I am going to put down some of my swatches and also some of my oil pastel techniques. So I'm going to do about 7 different techniques. So I'm going to try to give myself 7 different boxes on here. And it's okay if they're not perfect. I often put my tape on crookedly, and that's okay. Because it's not really something that I'm going to go hang up in a museum. It's just really something for me to practice with and then maybe look at later if I want to remember what I did. So some of these might have to share a box. I don't have quite enough space, but that's okay. Sharing is caring. Okay. So this is going to be kind of my general swatching area for some of the other tools. And then over here will be the area where I do some techniques with the oil pastel. So I'm just going to go ahead and start putting down some of this color. So this is really nice. These are the Pitt pens. And what I like about these is they have almost like a watercolory kind of transparent effect, which is pretty cool, in contrast to the really opaque materials that we have with the Plumchester paint marker and the oil pastels. I'm trying to kind of get these to fade into each other. And I'm going to zoom you guys in, so we're going to slowly kind of zoom into the paper. And now you have a nice up-close look at what I'm working on, so you don't have to look at everything being so tiny. So those are the Pitt pens, and I don't have water with me, but if you have water, you could test it out just to see if it plays well with water, or if you want to go on top with some kind of pen, then you can see how it will react. It's always nice to kind of see how tools will react together if you're planning to use things on the same drawing paper. So I'm getting my marker started, and with this kind, you just kind of tap on the nib to get the paint to start flowing. I'm going to start with the bullet end, but this piece comes out. I would recommend maybe using a pair of tweezers if you don't want to get paint all over your hands. And if you don't mind getting paint on your hands, then you can definitely just use your fingers for that. And it takes a little while, but it'll start to flow. Actually, maybe I will flip it over just to show you. With inky fingers or painty fingers, that's okay. Here we go. So that's some really nice color, and I think I'm gonna, maybe not in this one, I think in this box, I'm gonna add some of this paint on here so I can layer the oil pastel on top. Okay. So we'll get a swatch of that on there, and then we'll add this over on our swatch side. Okay, so those are our 2 extra tools that are not the oil pastel, and now it's time to really dig in and use these really awesome tools. So I'm going to keep this handy too, since I have my other blending tools. They're off to the side, and I'll be zoomed in, you can't see them, but they're there, ready to go. So one of the first things that you can do, I think I'm going to use, I want to make a purple color. We'll make purple this time. And it's nice that you have the 3 primary colors so you can kind of mix anything that you want. Before I jump in, one more thing that I always keep handy is a paper towel. And this is useful, especially once you start blending, because you can wipe off your pastels. But the first technique, and I think this is going to be the one that shares, is called heavy pressure blending. And truthfully, with oil pastels, you don't have to press super hard because they are so soft and so creamy that they are really gonna go down onto the paper really, really easily. So you don't have to use too much pressure. But what you can do is kind of go back and forth between the 2 colors and blend them together. And then, of course, see now that's why I have this over here, so I can wipe off where it picked up the color. Like that, so now they're clean. And then you can go in with your blending stump. And I'm using the technique of using little circles. That's usually how I kind of blend my colors together. But, you know, you can try out whatever works best for you. You can kind of go from dark to light. And I'm not pressing down too hard because if I press down really hard, it's going to start to lift up my pastels. And I want it to kind of be a smooth blend of the 2. And I'm just wiping this off over here. So that's the heavy pressure blending. And you'll see I generously added pastel in one direction on the paper. And the more colors that you layer on top of each other, you're going to achieve a really blended and rich look. So you can see I have this nice rich purple in the middle, and you can see where I started with the red and the blue. So this is where I'm going to share my swatch box. And now this is going to be kind of the same idea, but instead of pressing down really hard, I'm using a very, very light touch. And this is light pressure blending. This might seem familiar if you've seen any of the other kind of tutorials that I've done for ArtSnacks before with colored pencils. This is sort of a similar approach where you can adjust the amount of pressure that you use with your drawing tool to get a different effect on the paper. So you can see the difference between the 2. Just pressure alone can give you a really different effect with the same tool. So lightly adding pastel in one direction, you see more of the white of the paper coming through. And again, you're layering those colors to achieve various hues. So you can see I have the bright blue, the bright red, and then it's creating this sort of warm purple in the middle. And again, you can go in with a blending tool. And this time, because there's not as much on the paper, I kind of get this really soft, almost sort of dreamy blending effect that you can blend out into the lighter parts of the paper. And you can adjust the amount of pressure used with the blending stump as well. And that might affect how much of the oil pastel is being blended, lifted, pushed into the paper, all that good stuff. And then you can even kind of pick up that color and add it out into more areas. So you can see that you can really start to play around with textures. You start to play around with colors and how the pastel is going onto the paper. So the next one I'm going to show you, and again, if you've seen me do a demonstration with colored pencil before, this might sound familiar. Let's switch it up and add in the yellow now. Scale is feeling left out. This technique is called scumbling, which is a really funny name just for scribbling. So what you can do is sort of just add a loose sort of scribbly shape onto your paper. And you can layer those colors to create a really rich and dense effect. And you can go back and forth with these. And especially if you have like a lighter color on top of a darker color, you can sort of blend them together a little bit. So why would you use sort of a scribbly technique? This can be really useful if you are trying to create a sense of texture, if you want something that has, a really interesting way that colors are blended together that is not as straightforward as just kind of going in one direction, if you want to have a little bit more visual interest, even if it doesn't necessarily reflect the type of texture that you're trying to render. This can be a really fun and useful technique just to create a really cool way to blend the colors together that's a little unexpected. And what's really nice is, these are just so soft that, as you are blending them together, they are really kind of coming together in a super interesting way, which I think is really beautiful. So that's scumbling. So it's controlled scribbled marks of oil pastel to build up value and texture. And, you can even go in and add in some more darker areas if you want to build up texture. And don't forget, you can vary the size of your scribbles. You can, have really, really small ones that are very close together. And that will create more of a sense of darker value, as well as the actual color values that start to build up. Or you can have really great, big, round, wide scribbles that leave more of the white of the paper, and that will create a sense of a lighter value as well. Okay, so the next technique that you can try is color mixing. So it's a little bit like blending, but now what you're going to be doing is applying a layer of oil pastel and then follow with a contrasting color over top. So you can continue to blend and layer additional colors to get the desired hue. So let's go ahead and try all of these together. And if you know a little about color theory, you'll know that, of course, red and blue make purple. Well, yellow is the opposite of purple on the color wheel. And when two opposites are put together, they neutralize the color and create kind of a gray or a brown color. So it's really interesting. You have kind of an infinite amount of combinations. Maybe not infinite, but you have a lot of different color combination options. And you don't have to stick to just two colors together. And it's the same deal with, blue and yellow make green. Well, the opposite of green on the color wheel is red. So that works out well. And then, of course, red and yellow make orange, and blue is the opposite of orange. So it all works together really well. It's nice that you have the three primary colors. And I don't know if you guys got, the primary colors. If you got different colors, let me know, because we can always talk about other ways to blend them. But I think, what was I going to do? I got so excited about talking about color theory that I got distracted. So let's start out. I'm just using kind of a medium amount of pressure this time. I'm going to mix a green, because I haven't mixed green on here yet. Making a lovely green color. And then I think I'm gonna blend it out a little with my blending stump, just to really bring those two colors together. I love a really beautiful green color. I think this looks really nice. Okay, so you can see, you can vary how much of the actual oil pastel is on your paper, and that can affect how dense the oil pastel is on the paper. So it doesn't have to be scary. Oh, Erin, that's one of your favorite art words. Great, I love that. Okay, so let's go in with a really contrasting color here. And let's mix in the red. So you can see a little bit of that green is coming through, but you can have some really nice layers of color, and maybe they aren't necessarily blended together. Maybe they, some are solid blocks of a single hue. Flip over to my clean edge. Just kind of blend it out. So you can see I'm starting to create really interesting layers, and I'm really intrigued by how there's sort of this almost transparency coming through. So you can put a color on top, but it might not be the pure hue. You might start to get some of that color underneath lifting in, which is really interesting. A really cool effect, I think. And you can get kind of a little bit of almost a gradient with pulling out the color too. These pastels are a little messy. I already got some on some of the other parts of my page, but that's okay. I'm not too worried about it. And you know what? Well, I have this over here. I'm going to add another layer of a mixed media color. I'll add some of the Kit 10 over here too. And you could definitely do like a color gradient too, which if I have some room, maybe I'll do over here. But yeah, you can layer up those colors really nicely, and you can start to build up, all the color. I think maybe something that people don't feel like they have as much control over when it comes to working with pastels, and maybe this is something that makes people feel intimidated, is the fact that it's a little harder to get detail because everything is so soft. But this next technique I think is pretty cool, and maybe something that people haven't tried or thought of using oil pastel before. So I'm not going to worry too much about the areas where there's a little bit of smudging. That's okay, because what I'm going to do is I'm just going to really press this yellow into the paper, and it's okay if there's a little bit of red in here, because my goal is to have a nice light color for my first layer. And then what you can do is you can put a darker color on top. And if you have a black oil pastel, this will work really well. But any color you have will do for this technique. So I really want this nicely blended into my paper. I don't want too much excess. Oh, hi, welcome. I'm so excited to see we have a couple more people joining us. Glad to have you here. Okay, so let me move this up a little bit for you. So this next technique that I'm going to show you is called sgraffito. And hopefully I'm saying that right. It's spelled like Sgraffito. And what that is you're going to overlap two thick layers of different colors on your paper. And then I'll show you what I got all of my other tools out for the next part. So I'm going to go ahead and add my next thick layer on here. I'm trying to preserve as much of the blue. I'm trying not to blend the colors together too much, because I want them to be separate for this. Still going to be a little green because that's just the nature of putting layers on top of each other. It's not going to be pure blue because that yellow is always going to kind of shine through. But now I have two kind of thick layers, and what I'm going to do is I'll take my X-Acto knife first, and then what you can do is scratch out the pastel, and you can have a lot more control over the details. And you can think about, how you want to layer the colors. And it just depends on, what sort of drawing you want to do. But you can really get very, very detailed. You can even do some line work. So you could do, a drawing like that. I don't know if you can see I drew a little teeny smiley face. And if you're a little nervous about using something like an X-Acto knife, any tool you have will work. So this is, just a paper clip. You can use a paper clip to add some details in there. And you can, of course, go back and do this on any thick layer of oil pastel. And I also have a thumbtack will work in here. And you can see I'm getting different line qualities with the different size tools that I'm using, different size scratching tools. I have a couple of different X-Acto knives. And you'll notice, if I'm using a broader edge, then I can get a wider line. And then here's where I brought this out. Be careful if you're using something like this, but you can scratch away big areas and get this really nice, cool kind of almost brushy effect on there. So you can clear out big areas of the oil pastel with this graffito effect. So it's pretty cool. It's almost like if you've ever used Scratchboard before. It's kind of the same idea. And then, you can always go back if you find like, ooh, I didn't really mean to do that. You can always go back in and sort of almost erase out what you did by just adding a layer of pastel back on top. And then you can even go in and add in something like another color, and things start to get really interesting. So think about, if you have multiple layers. So let's go back in and add the red. Then I can go in and kind of scratch that color out. And now I've got, areas with the blue and the red and those sort of spots of color, but I can still go in and pull that yellow out anytime I want. And I think I may have already mentioned this, but in case I didn't, it's really useful to use a really light color underneath and a dark color on top, because the dark color is going to show through any light color that you put on top more easily than the light color would show through. And part of the reason that I really pushed that yellow into the paper is because I'm scraping off layers of pastel. Then I still have some of that color in the paper so that I'm not scraping off so much that it doesn't show through anymore. So that's graffito. So I think that's pretty cool. So now what I'm going to show you is using the baby oil. And that's a really easy, affordable, and inexpensive option for blending. I really like that also for oil paints. When I was an art student and I was in oil painting classes, one of my least favorite things about working with oils was the really smelly terpenoid. It's also back in the day, people used turpentine. Turpentine's a little powerful, so there's something called terpenoid, which is a little bit of a less powerful cleaner for your brushes. Because oil paint doesn't come off with just water. Oil and water resist each other. So I always used baby oil as an option too, because baby oil will help blend your pastels or your oil paints together, but it also works with pastels. So what I'm going to do is just add a couple chunks of color. So I'll do red and yellow. I don't think, well, I did that up there, but I'm gonna, I think I'll do something that's kind of make a little bridge of color at the bottom. And I want to leave some white paper so I have some space to blend out. So Another simple tool that you can use is just a Q-tip. And you don't want too much. And you can even like dab off a little bit of the excess. But that will soften up, and it'll actually kind of soak into your paper a little bit, which is why you don't want to use too much. But you can use it as a way to kind of lift off the thicker parts of the oil pastel, and it will start to kind of blend out almost like a what am I trying to think of? I don't want to say watercolor because it's not quite like that, but it can lift off the color a little bit, and you get a thinner layer than you would with just blending it out with just the Q-tip. And you can kind of push it around a little bit more like paints. So I'll show you with this is just a plain dry Q-tip, the difference in effect. So you can see how it has like a sort of a drier pull. This is also a fine way to blend them. When I was in high school, I did a oil pastel project, and I used Q-tips to blend without any oils. But hopefully you can kind of see the difference between the two. So you can see how this kind of leaves almost like a shiny effect. It'll take a while to dry, so be patient. Whereas this is a more matte effect. So you can see the two like that. And then I also wanted to try, it's an experiment, just putting a little bit of the baby oil on a brush and just seeing what happens. It's going to soak in the paper a little bit, so a nice thick paper is good. But yeah, you can kind of see how you can start to make paintbrush strokes with that. And I'll just show you what it looks like. Maybe I'll grab a different brush. That one is a little oily. Wow, I don't have another rough, scratchy brush, but I'll try to get as much of the oil out as I can, just so I can show you the comparison over here with a less oily brush. So it's a lot drier of an effect, and it doesn't lift it off quite as evenly. You have to do a little more scrubbing. There's a little cat hair in there. Thanks a lot for studio assistant. So you can see how it has kind of a similar effect, but you know, you can really get almost like a cloudy sort of effect if you have something that is like foggy or has a little bit of a smoke effect. Something like that would be a really great option. You can get some pretty cool effects that way too. Okay, so I have one more square left, and that is just layering oil pastels on top of other media. So I'm gonna kind of just try doing some line work. You can also do some layers on top like that. And just kind of show. So you could do a drawing underneath and then add some effects from the oil pastels that way too. Another effect that I ran out of room for in my squares, but I can show you over here, is another technique that you can use with any drawing tool, but is really effective for blending colors. And I think I'm going to use red and blue again for this. I'll give myself a little more space so you can see the bottom of the paper, is stippling. And you can use either dots, or you can do very quick, choppy strokes to create sort of a stipply effect, or like a staccato effect almost. And you can blend colors together that way too. I don't think Picasso used this technique, but I know that some of his contemporaries used a technique called pointillism. Pointillism is different than stippling because it has a lot to do with color theory and how colors look in relationship to each other. But pointillism is using little dots of color blended together to create a larger scene or field of color, which is very interesting. So you could be thinking about that and how the colors blend together through stippling effect. This could also be really useful if you don't want your colors to blend together too much. They'll blend together a little bit just because of the nature of oil pastels. They're very soft and blendable as soon as they touch another color. But you can definitely sort of keep the colors separated by using this technique as well. Oil pastels are really fun. They're super messy, but they're a really great tool for creating fields of color if you're somebody who likes doing abstract types of drawing or just really getting onto a piece of paper and making some marks, creating textures. This is a really excellent tool for that. When I heard that there were some people who were feeling a little intimidated by there being oil pastels, I was like, oh gosh, well, there's all kinds of cool stuff you can do with them. Oh, and lest I forget, I have one more cool thing that I haven't tried this before, so I'm trying this out with you. But I brought out this candle for a reason. Now, before I do this, let me preface with some safety tips. I'm going to zoom out just a little so you can see a little more of the action of what I'm doing. So oil pastels are already very soft, but you can soften them up even more with heat. Now, if you're going to try this out, 1, be very careful. Make sure that this is a controlled environment. 2, don't stick your oil pastel right in the flame. Think about it kind of like toasting a marshmallow. You just want to warm it up a little bit. If you feel a little nervous about using a flame, you could always find other, like a hair dryer or something that's a little bit more controlled. But I am just going to hold this over top just a little bit. So you can see I'm not holding it right in the flame, but just enough to get a little bit of the heat on there. And I'm keeping my hand at a safe distance, but you can see how it already started to just melt it just a little bit. I don't want it too melty, but that kind of creates a little bit of a even softer, thicker application. Probably don't want to wait too long, but it's something that you can try if you're just experimenting with texture and kind of getting a more, this has almost like what's called an impasto effect. Impasto is when you have a really, really thick layer of a material. It's usually used with oil paints. But you can see how I got a really nice thick layer, a thick texture. Yes, it softens them up. So they're already soft, but you can make them even softer. And you can see it's kind of on here too. And actually, while I'm thinking of interesting techniques, why not try something like, if you get a little bit of baby oil on a brush off the excess, and kind of pull some color off. You could almost paint with it like that too. And then you can blend and get really, really soft, light colors together. Yeah, I think that looks pretty cool. So this kind of hopefully goes to show that it's really, what you try with different tools. Don't be afraid to experiment. Try things out. Think about applications of tools that you're comfortable with, that you're familiar with, and maybe how you can translate that into something that is brand new to you, that maybe feels a little bit intimidating, or you're unsure how to use it. You just try those things out, see if it works for you. And if, maybe you'll make some discoveries or find a brand new technique that you really like. I think that this would be really fun to try. I really am a big fan of these beautiful brush strokes, and these really soft, almost cloudy kind of uh, really blended together looks. But in contrast with these really sharp uh, sort of line work, mark making techniques, I think they could be really beautiful together. Imagine if you put maybe this layer down first and then put a couple thick layers on top. You went back in and scratched some things out. Maybe you did a drawing with, some of these tools first, and you did something really interesting and then went back on top with these nice opaque oil pastels, and then you went back in and kind of scratched that out, or um, blended that out, blended it together. So this is, I think, one of the most interesting ArtSnacks boxes I've ever gotten. And I'm so excited to have gotten oil pastels, because it's something that I don't always think about drawing with, because there's not as much control with them. But sometimes giving up control with art can be very, very useful, and you can make all kinds of really cool discoveries. So of course I have to peel off my washi tape to reveal the very nice clean lines in between my swatch areas. Oh, be careful when you do it. Oh no. This happens to me every time. A trick for that is if you pat your tape down on your pants a little bit to de-stickify it a little, that'll prevent the ripping from happening. Also, maybe just take your time. Don't be so over enthusiastic like me. So just use caution. So a trick for storing things with oil pastel. You could use a fixative, but oil pastel tends to stay soft even with a fixative. So a couple things you could do. You can really let it sit and dry a little more. It's always going to be kind of soft and flexible, because oil doesn't really dry, just like oil paints. Up to a certain point, it's going to stay still pretty wet, or maybe not wet, but just mutable, like it can move around. So a trick you can do is, if you have just like some newspaper or newsprint, you can layer, or you cannot not layer. You could put a piece of it on top and just tape it and store it with a piece of newsprint on top. That'll help prevent smudging, but it'll also protect any other artwork that maybe you're storing this with, so that your pastels don't smear and smudge on top. So that'll help protect your work that way. And you can try the fixative. That's usually, you can use either a fixative that you get from an art store, or just hairspray, honestly, works just as well as fixative does. And that's another more low-cost alternative if you're experimenting with that. So there's a couple ways, but I think the best way is to use a piece of paper to protect it as you're storing it, or if you have it in your sketchbook so it doesn't get as jostled around. So yeah, so Laurelyn's saying that they've used oil pastels before. They just take some time to get used to. And I agree with that. They're definitely, like you say, they're well worth the practice, because you can get some really, really amazing results. And I think another thing that I really love about them is just how bright and vibrant they are. Gosh, they're so beautiful and so striking, in the colors. They really, really pop against the paper. So I think that there's a lot that you can do with them, and they're really just delightful to work with. So I really hope that you learned a couple things, maybe some things you hadn't tried before or thought of, or maybe you were too nervous to try before, but hopefully now you're feeling empowered. And if you haven't tried them out yet, I hope that and you try them out soon, please share any experiments or, artwork that you've tried with the oil pastels. You can share them on Mix. As a reminder, that is mix.artsnacks.co. There is a group on there for ArtSnacks Open Studio Live. So if you made something while you were watching, feel free to post in there. But even if you watch something later or you're inspired to try something after the live stream, please share that. You can also share on Instagram. You can tag ArtSnacks on Instagram, or you can use the hashtag ArtSnacks Open Studio to share your work. And I would really love to see what you make, especially if you're excited to try something brand new and you're doing something that's kind of out of the box for you. So that was the April box. And just a quick reminder, if you are not an ArtSnacks subscriber yet, but maybe you've been convinced after seeing some of the cool stuff that comes in the ArtSnacks Plus box, or if you want to try out the regular box, don't forget to use the code ENJOY20 to take 20% off your first box of an ArtSnacks or ArtSnacks Plus subscription plan. And if you're maybe looking to check out some markers, if you're looking for something like, I think the paint markers are on there too, but all the markers are 50% off through Sunday. So if you're looking to stock up, definitely check that out because it's 50% off all all markers in the ArtSnacks shop. So again, that's shop.artsnacks.co, and if you spend $45, you get a free Marabou graphics marker pad, which is pretty awesome. So I had a lot of fun trying out these techniques, and truthfully, I learned a lot of stuff too. Trying this stuff out, there were some things that I knew, but there were some things that were brand new to me, or some ideas that kind of just came to me as I was trying things out, and sort of playing around with the tools, experimenting, seeing what would happen. So don't be afraid to try things out. And I really hope to see you all next week and on Mix. So I hope you all have a great night. Thanks for joining me. Bye.